Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Picks. The other half of the show, the Parlay, joining me in to break down some UFC Louisville. But before we do that, let's recap last week's card, UFC 302. It was a success from my part on the Homo Fight Picks Discord. If you're in there, you got in for 50% off for the entire month. We got 5 UFC cards in the month of June. And if you signed up this past week, use code DIAMOND, you got 50% off. And last week, we went up 4.35 units. So it was a good night for us. My 2 biggest plays of the night cashed with ease. The over 1.5 in the main event, cashed with ease. And then the fight to start round 4 in the co-main event, cashed with ease as well. Really not much of a sweat there. So happy to do that. Also hit a nice prop, Kevin Holland round 1 submission. But a lot of the other props just never really had a chance because we had so many decisions. We had 12 fights. 9 of them went to a decision. And most of the props that I had were finished props. So those were never live. And then we also hit some overs as well. So pretty solid night for me on the card. And the pay-per-view success, it just keeps continuing. We're positive over 25 units on the year on pay-per-views alone. So later in the month, when it's UFC 303, we're going to try to continue that train. How'd it go for you at UFC 302?
Yeah, it was a bad night, mostly because all these fights all went to decision, man. I mean, I had a lot of leans on some of these fights to go under 2.5 rounds at plus money. I thought Grant Dawson would be able to get Selecki out of there. Selecki could pull off something stupid early in the fight, and I thought one of them was going to gas too, and then we'd get a finish off of that. Didn't happen. Grant Dawson kind of took the easy route to an easy win, and just tried to stay in his guard and land a few shots and ground and pound and call it a night. That sucked. I thought Basil Hafez and Mickey Gall, I thought both of those guys would put on a war like they did. But I thought
they fucking put on a war.
Man, they put on a war, and I thought somebody would fall. I really did.
Yeah.
So I took the under 2.5 early in the week. It was like minus 120. I thought that was a great number for 2.5 rounds in that fight. So that didn't hit. Nico Price, Alex Morono under 2.5 didn't hit. It almost did. I mean, Nico Price, if he had more left in the tank, he could have finished Alex easy. Alex was done. So that sucks. And, I had Cesar Almeida as well, and I thought he gave himself a chance to win based off of damage. I definitely thought Kopylov won the fight, but Almeida, in theory, was one takedown defense away in the 3rd round from winning the fight. Either he finishes him or, he wins on all judges' scorecards, and we're looking at a split decision for him. Same thing with the 2nd round too. Like if he stuffs one more takedown there in the middle of the round, it's a whole different story. So that was disappointing. Overall, man, like I said, I had a lot of finishing props too. I had Kevin Holland by finish, which hit. That was nice. But I also had Basil Hafez by finish by KO. I had the first fight of the night, Raposo and Lima to end in the 2nd or 3rd round, either winner. Didn't hit. Neither one of those guys really showed up wanting to fight. Yeah, it's just frustrating night, man. But I tried to look at it in a positive light. I lost 9.05 units, and that's my biggest loss in the last 18 months.
Yeah, that's
not bad. Like if that's my worst loss, I can live with it. So
yeah, in the last couple of weeks before that, I mean, you were up positive units over 5 or something like that. So
yeah, I was up right under 10 units in the last 2 cards, and I gave 9 of that back. So we really didn't. We were free rolling there in this last month. So
that's the swings.
We'll bounce.
It's the name of the game. And maybe this week you'll be getting all those 9 units back.
Oh yeah.
So UFC 302 is in the past, and we can move on to UFC Louisville. We got 14 fights to break down. We're gonna go through, give you every single one of our predictions and our picks. We'll break down each fight individually, and then of course they're not bets. So if you want the bets, jump in the Home Fight Picks Discord. The premium membership link is down in the description below. Main event, Jared Cannonier, Nasruddin Imavov. I think it's a very intriguing matchup. Middleweight fight, and one that will probably prove whether Cannonier is still at the top or if Nasruddin Imavov is moving his way up the rankings and making some noise. So another good co-main event as well. Dominic Reyes is back. Dustin Jacoby's been around for a while. Reyes really got to lock in here. He's on a 4-fight losing streak, and if he loses this one, it might be done. So yeah, we're gonna go through every single fight, and we can start it off with the first fight of the night. Puja Tomar coming in as the underdog, making her UFC debut against Rayan Dos Santos, sitting at minus 235. And I believe this line is just continuing to grow for the Dos Santos side. She's 28 years of age. She lost her UFC debut to Talita Alankar in a split decision where she really stuffed the takedowns, did some damage on the feet, but it just looked like the aggression was on the Alankar side, and she loses that one. And then Tomar is making her UFC debut. She is from India, and that does seem to be a market that the UFC is trying to tap into. She's 8-4, and her last win was a stoppage win in round 4, and that was back in July of 2023. She's on a 4-fight win streak, looking to continue it here. Do you think she has any chance to pull it off as the underdog this weekend?
Looking at the tape, it's hard to tell at this level of women's mixed martial arts. Tomar, she's fought some decent competition, but she's also, as of recently in 2021, fought a girl making her debut in mixed martial arts. So, it's kind of been up and down. She took a lot of losses there, kind of, earlier half of her mixed martial arts career. But, they're two good fighters. And, like Stamp Fairtex in one FC, she's fought her. She got beat pretty bad, but, she has experience against high level fighters like that, which I like. I think the name of the game for her, though, she's got to keep this thing standing. She's going to have to stay at range, use her striking. She can be kind of wild and chaotic, can be really aggressive. She'll throw a bunch of kicks, like left, right, left, just throwing anything she can at you, just being a little ball of fire. And, it works out sometimes for her. Sometimes these inexperienced opponents, like Jojo Rajkumari, like 0-0, comes in there and goes to a split decision with Tomar. So, like, I don't know. I think her striking can overwhelm girls who don't have the experience. Girls that do have the experience are able to kind of stay composed, be patient, and get the fight where they want to. And then they have a lot of success off of that. And I think Amanda Dos Santos, you could probably find info on her under both names. But I think she's one of those fighters that's going to stay patient. She's not going to try to play that, striking from range game with her. I think she's going to look to get on the inside, make it a little dirty in the clinch, get the fight to the ground, and look to work off of that. She is really good on the ground. I do like her submission game. She seems pretty high level in that department. If you look at her record, she's won most of her fights by submission. You look at Pooja's record, she's lost most of her losses by submission. So that's a big red flag for me for Pooja here. I know the UFC would love to tap into that India market, but she's got to keep it standing. I just don't know if she does. We've seen her taken down in lower level fights. If Rayan gets her hands locked, she's probably going for a ride. She's probably going to get submitted. So I got to take Rayan here for the pick. I think she gets it done by sub.
Yeah, I think if Tomar could keep it on the feet, she's got a real chance to win this because she's an aggressive striker. And then really, if you watch her tape, she's not bad on the feet. I mean, she'll rip some solid leg kicks, and then she'll let her hands go. She's a southpaw striker. And for Dos Santos, I think she just needs to go to the grappling game from the jump. If she can get it there, then I think she'll probably be levels above Tomar because Tomar just does not have a ground game. She's been submitted numerous times, and she's been ground and pounded out. So the writing's on the wall for Dos Santos. Get this chick to the ground and do your work there. It's the easiest path to victory for her. She's the pick, but at minus 235 or higher, low level, super low level women's MMA that it's not even worth it to me. But yeah, nonetheless, she is the pick. Moving on, we got Cody Stamann coming in as the underdog against Taylor Lapilus. Lapilus sitting at minus 260, Stamann near a 2-1 underdog. He is 34 years of age. He's a guy that's been around for a while. He's fought a lot of good guys. Said Nurmagomedov, Murad Dvalishvili, Aljamain Sterling, Song Yadong. He's pretty much seen the top of the bantamweight division. So he's got a lot of experience there. Taylor Lapilus, second stint in the UFC, won his first fight in his second stint, and then just coming off a loss to Farid Basra, where he got grappled up. It's a big favorite here, man. Do you think there's any value on the Lapilus side?
It's tough to say. First of all, it is crazy that Cody Stamann kind of came up with like the Aljos and the Haravs and has fought those guys early in his career. Definitely good experience. He's had success against some of the high level guys too. Like Song Yadong, the fight was a draw. He was able to land 5 takedowns, outstruck Song. Beats Brian Kelleher in 2020. Brian Kelleher even then was towards the end of anything he was going to do in the UFC. but he competes. He seems like he competes in a lot of the fights he's in. Outside of getting submitted by Said Nurmagomedov, this guy is only losing basically, and Aljo subbed him as well. He's only losing decisions. Like, he hangs tough. You're not really going to knock him out. He's great with his wrestling. When he can get that going offensively, he always gives himself a chance to win. His striking's come along too, in my opinion. He holds a little pop in the hands. He's got some short arms. He's fairly got that fairly brawling style to where if guys want to exchange with him, like, he can land the big shots if he wants, and he's tough. So he's got that going for him. But if he's fighting a guy in Taylor Lapilus who has a 77% takedown defense, guys like Farid Basharat, he fought in his last fight. Like, that's a very high level opponent. He was able to land 5 takedowns on him. But Farid's very good, man. He made that fight, go to the judges' scorecards. Both of them were pretty even on significant strikes. Like, he wasn't completely outclassed in that fight, I didn't think. Before that, beats Keelan Logren and beat him pretty badly by decision, in my opinion. So I just think Taylor Lapilus, if he stuffs the takedowns, I don't really know what Cody Stamann's going to go to here to make this fight, real close, because Taylor Lapilus is going to be a better striker. I think he's going to land more volume if this fight plays out on the feet than Cody Stamann. The striking is very technical. His striking defense is very, very good. So again, if it stays standing, this is Lapilus. If it goes to the ground, I still think he's going to have a chance to beat Cody Stamann, because if you can't hold him on the ground, Stamann's not really the submission guy, and he's not going to be able to land a bunch of ground and pound without giving Lapilus opportunities to get back to the feet. I just think this is a tough one for Cody, man. I got to pick Taylor Lapilus to win the fight. I don't think either guy can finish each other here. I think both guys are tough. So I'm leaning Taylor Lapilus by decision.
Yeah, I think it's a tough fight for Stamann, but I also don't think it's out of reach to where he couldn't pull off a victory here, because I think Lapilus is a super solid striker, but he's got that like French style where it's not super high volume. It's just really just picks his shots, has really good striking defense. You can see the reach on the screen. He's going to have a massive reach advantage, even though they're the same height. And he's just going to try to keep you at range. He's going to throw that right lead hand out there, try to keep you at range, and then he's going to pick the shots as you come in. So for Cody, he also, he has a great significant strike ratio. He has great striking defense as well, and he has the takedown upside. I don't know if he's going to be able to, hold down Lapilus like you alluded to, because Lapilus has good takedown defense and he's got a good get-up game. But Lapilus is minus 260. Like, in a fight that's probably going to go to a decision, both guys are super durable. The over 2.5 is like minus 300 or something like that. Then you're leaving it in the judges' hands for the scorecards. And, if Stamann lands a few good shots in 2 of the rounds, you might steal those rounds, because I don't think Lapilus really hits that hard. I don't think he's going to be super high volume. I think if Stamann can find his entries and find his hands onto the face of Taylor Lapilus, maybe he could steal some rounds. So I would take Taylor Lapilus for a pick, just straight up. But I just don't think I could trust him to cover minus 260, really. I think it could be a 29-28 either way. And I don't really see Taylor Lapilus going out there 30-27 in them, like, clean victory. So betting wise, I'd probably tend to lean the dog, but for a pick, I got to go with Taylor Lapilus. Moving on, we got Eduarda Moura coming in as a near 2-1 favorite over Denise Gomes. Gomes is 24 years of age, has more UFC experience than the favorite here in Eduarda Moura. Moura made her debut in UFC Brazil last year. Absolutely ran through Montserrat Ruiz. It was a fight where she had a massive size advantage, and she just outmuscled her completely on the ground and got her out of there in the second round. She's a big girl for 115. And you see it on the screen. She didn't make 115 her last time out. She missed weight. So we'll see if she can make the weight this time. But at 5'6", she's not even skinny. Like, she's yoked up. You can see her chin here. Her chin is like damn near Drew Dober. We're getting there. We're getting to Drew Dober status for Eduarda Moura's chin. But Denise Gomes is a dog, and we've seen her knock out girls in unlike any other strawweight, really. Just real one-shot knockout power. Seems like her grappling is continuing to improve, and her last fight was against Angela Hill, who's a top 10 strawweight right now. So it's not a bad loss for Denise Gomes to come off to. and she's a dog here. So more UFC experience, younger fighter, and she's still the dog. Do you think she has a chance to pull off a victory here?
Definitely. Gomes is one of those girls that's always got a chance because of the power. I can't remember the last time a women's fighter at 115 pounds gotten back-to-back bad knockouts like that. Like we were at the one against Bruna Brazil in Kansas City, and she smoked her in that second round. And then she goes in against Yasmin Jauregui and
We were
does
there
the
for that
same
one.
thing. Yeah, I guess we were for that. Yeah, we were there for that one too last July. Smoked her as well. So she's just definitely got the dynamite in her hands. Grappling wise, like she's gonna have to keep this one on the feet if she wants a prayer because she is gonna be way smaller than Eduardo Moura. And Moura is very, very competent on the ground. She's good with her weight distribution. She's good at holding girls down and getting them in the position that she wants. And if you're Denise Gomes at 5'2", 63-inch reach, and you go up against the 5'6", jacked Eduardo Moura, and you're on the ground under her, I don't think she's going to have a real easy time getting back to her feet at all. And then she's kind of screwed. And then once, Moura can kind of do that a few times in the first round, you think you take a lot of the energy out of Denise Gomes and you take that power away, and then she's going to struggle from there because Moura is not a bad striker on the feet either. She's shown she's got some pop in her hands. She's long. She's athletic. She's not going to be a fish out of water there by any means. But that first round, Denise is live as hell, and if she can stuff the takedowns here, I think Moura is going to start getting frustrated, and she's going to leave herself open, and that's when Denise is really going to be able to capitalize. But it's going to be who can implement that game plan.
Yeah.
If Moura gets the takedowns, I have to lean with her, and I'm kind of thinking that she does. She's got 100% takedown accuracy so far in the UFC in 2 fights. Both those fights she ended, one by submission in her debut, and the second one she gets the TKO against Montserrat Ruiz. So I like Moura here. I like the size a lot. If you're betting on Denise Gomes, I think you just have to take the knockout prop because if she doesn't get the knockout, I think she gets outworked for 3 rounds here.
Yeah, I think it's just going to come down to the cardio from Eduardo Moura because she's had damn near all of her wins come in the first round. 7 of her 10 wins, and then the other 2 come in the second round. She's only been to a decision once, and it was a split decision to a girl that was 12 and 14 at the time. So I don't know that I can really trust her cardio. And if I'm looking at the Denise Gomes side, she's a girl that is explosive in the first round, does tend to slow down in rounds 2 and 3, but I would trust her cardio a lot more than the Moura side because we've actually seen her go to a decision and we've seen her win a decision. So I think if Denise comes out guns blazing and she can make Moura uncomfortable with her hands, then that's a way she could take over this fight. If she does get taken down early on, I think she's just got to stay safe and just be tough to put away because if Mora's just easy or she's used to easily running through her opponents, and then you got Denise Gomes making it hard for her to get her out of there, might mess with her a little bit. And I think Denise is tough enough to deal with the ground game from Eduardo Moura. So I'm gonna go with Denise Gomes as the underdog. Um, just based on the level of experience and level of competition, I think she should be able to pull off a victory here. So I'll take the dog.
It's actually a really fun women's fight.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Should be
both
good.
finishes too. So maybe the under two and
Yeah.
a half is the way to go, or the fight to not go the distance. So yeah, interesting one. Move on. We got Daniel Marcos coming in as a minus 111 underdog compared to the John Castaneda side sitting at minus 115. It's another matchup that's super even, and it's probably going to be people's not people's main event, but it's a controversial one throughout the week that the UFC bettors are going to be talking about which side you're on, Daniel Marcos or John Castaneda, because it's a super close fight. You got Marcos still undefeated. Castaneda's been in the UFC for a little bit, and he's 4-1 in his last 5, so he's had a good run of it. And he's taking on an up and coming contender here, or a prospect, I should say, in Daniel Marcos. So fun matchup. What do you think?
Yeah, looking at the price, I was almost a little shocked that Daniel Marcos wasn't the favorite. I was surprised he wasn't sitting at that minus 150 range. Hasn't lost yet, has a really good stand-up game. Yeah, it seems tough as nails at least. Nobody's really been able to, hurt him or put him in any real bad situations. His takedown defense is damn near 90% too. And I think that's how a lot of guys are going to have to beat him. And nobody's really, been able to do that. He was taken down a couple times on the Contender Series, but he got back up, ends up winning the decision. So I like his striking a lot. Simon Oliveira, he fought in his debut, and I think Daniel Marcos was only like a minus. I feel like he was in range to bet on. I can't remember exactly.
He was a dog.
Was he? Okay, I remember betting him. I bet him in every single fight. Actually, sorry, I bet him in against Simon Oliveira, and I bet him against Richie Lang. I bet Davey Grant against him, and I don't know how I lost that. But against Simon Oliveira, as the dog comes in and just absolutely, stuffs every single takedown and just brutally beat him to the body until Oliveira had no choice but just kind of crumble. That's just the kind of fighter Marcos is. He's going to exploit your weaknesses. If he feels you slowing down, he's going to start hitting you with those teeps, with those body kicks. He's going to really make you pay on every single mistake you miss. And John Castaneda on the other side is a guy who doesn't really lose. I mean, he's not really losing a lot of fights in the UFC, but he's not really fighting the best level of competition. He beat Kyung Ho Kang, who's a little bit older. He beat Muin Gaffarov. Miles Johns was a good win. Eddie Wineland at the end of his career. And, that's it. He's lost to Nathaniel Wood and Daniel Santos. He's lost by TKO to Daniel Santos after he got kind of just completely gassed out in that fight, and Santos was able to land some big shots. That's kind of the part that scares me here. Like, if Castaneda can't really get the wrestling going, and I don't really see him being able to just completely dominate Daniel Marcos with the wrestling, I think eventually he gets a little tired. And like I mentioned earlier in this breakdown, Daniel Marcos is the type he's going to really invest in that body early. And if you start to get tired, he's just going to keep going to it over and over. And I think it's going to play a big factor against a guy like Castaneda. For that reason, man, I'm taking Daniel Marcos, and he's actually one of the first bets of the week, just seeing that he was, I got him at minus 105, which I just thought was crazy. I thought he would be the favorite here for sure. He's undefeated. He's shown great takedown defense, and he's shown that he's a very high-level striker too. So the only thing that would worry me on his side is that there's times he can be a little bit low volume. I think he's just kind of a patient striker, but once he pours it on, he really, really, really pours it on. But that's the only problem I have. If he's worrying about the takedowns and he starts going a little less output, he could give away a round or two. But against John Castaneda, I think he's just going to have the better cardio. Eventually, the striking is really going to come along. Takedown defense is great. For that reason, I got to take him at this price.
Yeah, that's just my one worry for Marcos is like if he's going to come out throwing a lot of volume or not. Because if he does, then I think he's got a real great chance to win this fight, and he could look minus 200 or higher. Because I like Castaneda, I like his skill set, but he's just really struggled with guys that can put up a ton of volume and just keep the pressure on him, because he kind of relies on some backward movement, and eventually he starts to slow down. And then if you get guys that are able to close that distance and rip off 2 to 3, maybe even 4 shots at a time, then he starts to get into a kind of a panic mode, and then he'll just start trading with you. And more often than not, it doesn't work out well for him. So like last fight against Kyung Ho Kang, King was kind of just letting him work. He wasn't really in his face pressuring him. And Castaneda was able to put up over 100 significant strikes, land his takedowns, and that was a clean victory for him. But if you look at other fights, like a Daniel Santos was in his face the entire fight. Did get dropped early, but just kept coming forward and eventually finished him in round 2. And then his other loss in the UFC, Nathaniel Wood, put up 131 significant strikes compared to 55 for Castaneda. Marcos has shown that ability to put up a ton of significant strikes. But his one weakness we saw in the Davey Grant fight is a guy that is able to go in and out consistently. Davey Grant was giving him some trouble. And I thought Davey Grant won that fight. I mean, he outstruck him 70-48, and Marcos landed one takedown but did nothing with it. So if Marcos can keep forward pressure, use his kicks, use his hands, I think he's got really great timing on his entries. I think he should be able to win this fight. And probably by decision, though. I think Castaneda is tough enough that I don't really see a high likelihood for a Marcos finish here, unless he catches him with like a flying knee or some type of spinning back elbow or something like that. So I'll go with Marcos, but it's one I'm going to keep my eye on, just to do a little more research and see if I'm going to bet it. Move on. We got the biggest favorite of the night, Brad Katona, sitting at minus 620, taking on Jesse Butler. Butler moving down a weight class. So he's normally a 145er. Made his UFC debut at 155 against Jim Miller. Got absolutely murked, sent to the shadow realm in like less than 20 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
Not a good debut for Jesse Butler. So I guess maybe he felt Jim Miller's power at 155 and said, I belong at 135 where they can't crack like this, because this seems like it's going to be an insane cut for him. He's 5'10", 73-inch reach. He's fought at welterweight before. I need to see how this guy looks on the scales before I can really have any bet on this fight, to be honest. But Brad Katona at minus 620 for a guy that is a decision machine. I mean, you want to be holding that minus 620 ticket going into the judges scorecards. It's like, hell no. But yeah, nonetheless, I mean, he's the favorite probably for good reason. What do you think?
Yeah, this is crazy. You know how many people are going to have Brad Katona in their parlays this week at minus 620? It's just insane that people play that number on any fighter. But, I do think Brad wins the fight. For Jesse Butler, if he wants a chance to win the fight, I think he has to submit Brad Katona. And Brad Katona is just so well-rounded that I don't think he ever gives himself a shot to find a submission on him. I mean, Brad, if you want to stay on the feet with him, he's very technical. He doesn't have the most power by any means, but he will dog it out with you. He will fight at range. His boxing is very clean. He can wrestle as well. So if you want to go in and try to shoot takedowns on him, he's going to make you work. He's probably going to stuff him. He's very hard to put away in that department as well. If Jesse Butler can't really get to that, I just think he kind of gets picked apart at range. Yeah, he's going to be the bigger fighter here. But I don't really think it matters. I think he's that far behind in the striking from Katona that he's not going to have success there. And I just don't think he's skilled enough to really get to Katona's back or get on top of him on the ground. And if he does, I think Katona's skilled enough to get back to his feet. So it's really simple for me. I just think Brad Katona is too good everywhere. He's not great anywhere, but he's just too solid for Jesse Butler, at least. Brad Katona is never going to go out and be champion in the UFC. He's never going to go out and beat a lot of the top 10 guys, but he's going to beat a lot of the Jesse Butlers every single time he gets in there. So, yeah, it's a simple one for me, man. I think Brad Katona definitely wins. I don't think you waste your money on a big dog shot on this one, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
It's just crazy to think Brad Katona at minus 620.
He's the last person you would ever peg as a minus 620.
I mean, they probably found the only guy in the roster that could be where he could be minus 620 against. I mean, Brad Katona, really the only good wins in his entire career come in exhibition bouts, like on the Ultimate Fighter from 2018. Like, he beat Bryce Mitchell, he beat Kyler Phillips. But then you look at what he did after that. He's like beating nobodies in the UFC, then gets cut, goes fights in Brave. And those are decent fighters, but not really UFC level caliber fighters. And then he beats Cody Gibson, who was cut from the UFC as well, and then loses to Garrett Armfield. So it's like, I don't know. This guy's I don't really think he's that high level. He has no danger when it comes to his hands, no danger when it hits the ground. He's just a guy that's going to find a way to win. And at minus 620, it's can't trust the judges for one. And on the other side, Jesse Butler is like, I really wanted to see something on film that I'm like, yeah, Jesse Butler could win this fight, but I just don't see it, man. Like, Jesse Butler is not good, and I don't really trust the weight cut. I mean, he's going to be massive compared to Brad Katona if he can make the weight. Maybe he comes in at like 138, 139 or something, and maybe goes into the fight with a little advantage, maybe. But I don't know. Brad Katona's the pick, and yeah, probably just one I'm going to stay away from betting wise.
I think Brad Katona could find his first knockout here. Honestly, I know it's crazy to say. We'll have to clip this if it happens. But I mean, Jesse Butler is a guy who I've seen and I've read that he's fought in lower level competitions at 170 pounds before. And then his 155 debut against Jim Miller gets brutally knocked out. Like, that shot had to take years off of his life. Is 145 his natural weight class? Maybe. And now he's cutting all the way down to 135. Like, you're going to be dehydrated. Probably chin's not going to be as good as it should be in your natural weight class. And then, you go up and you start eating some shots from a guy who's technical. Like, he could find the button once in this fight. So come back to this if it happens. Not betting it right now, but come back to it.
He's going to slap the mustache off of Jesse. Jeez. We move on. Andrea Lee coming in at minus 132 against Montana De La Rosa. And boy, here we are again with a Montana De La Rosa fight. And last time out, after I watched that just disastrous performance from Montana De La Rosa against JJ Aldrich, where I was confident De La Rosa would go to a wrestling game. And
she's pick of the week for us.
She was pick of the week. She goes out there and just has a nice little sparring match with JJ Aldrich and loses the fight. I don't even think she attempted a takedown. If she did, it was a half-ass one. Here she is, slight plus money against Andrea Lee, who is on a 3 or 4 fight skid. She's 35. And she's the favorite. These ladies have already fought, though, and Andrea Lee found a win against Montana De La Rosa quite some time back. So this is a rematch. Andrea Lee was a minus 180 favorite the first time they fought. She beat her. And here we are later. She's at a minus 132. Kind of seeing some value. Not going to lie. Maybe that's just my hatred toward Montana De La Rosa at this point. But Andrea Lee kind of looking like a decent play here. What do you think? Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy at all. You know what's crazy, though? I mean, if that JJ Aldrich fight didn't happen, I would be all over Montana De La Rosa here.
Me too.
Because of the takedowns, for one, because, she's very strong looking, at least. I don't know how strong she actually is after that last performance, but she's bigger. She's tall. There's a lot to like about, the physical appearance as far as going in there for a fist fight, but she gets in there and it's like her striking, she can't really get her striking going ever. She's got a bad striking differential. She gets hit with a lot. Her striking defense isn't that good, and her takedown accuracy is only 31%. So at the end of the day, it's like, she's just not that good of a fighter, in my opinion. Now, Andrea Lee, 4-fight losing streak, not much better herself, but at least she's losing to the Macy Barbers and, Natalia Silvas. She's not losing to JJ Aldrich. So I don't know. I do think Andrea Lee, there's a lot of value on her here, because if she, keeps this thing on the feet, she could kick the brakes off of Montana De La Rosa. She really could. I think Andrea Lee's striking, although I think it's slowed down a tad, it's still going to be better than Montana's. She's still going to have a lot more power than Montana here. And if it stands, she's going to get that going, and it's going to look good to the judges for her. I could see Montana maybe dragging Andrea down a time or two, but Andrea's not a terrible, grappler. She's not going to just lay on her back. She's going to look to get back to her feet. She's going to be athletic enough to do so, I think. And you can tell she's really been working on her wrestling and her grappling in general, because her last few, I guess not her last few fights against Macy Barber, she landed 2 takedowns. 5 takedowns against Macy Barber. I read that backwards. That's actually crazy to think about. And then 2 against a good grappler and wrestler in Miranda Maverick. So it's coming around. She puts that together against Montana, she's going to win, in my opinion. So yeah, I got to ride with her. I think minus 132 is a pretty good price too.
Yeah, I think Andrea Lee, even if she does get taken down, I think she can get back up to her feet. And I don't think Montana De La Rosa is going to do much damage if she does get her to the ground. And on the feet, I think Andrea Lee, for as old and how slow she has looked, I think she might be better. This is such a greasy fight, but I'm really trying to fight back the urge to take or to put a bet on Andrea Lee. Just, I don't know if it's my hatred for De La Rosa, because I think JJ Aldrich is just a god-awful fighter. And she just went in there and had a clear game or clear path to win the fight. She just didn't take it. So
if she doesn't take it against Andrea, she's screwed. Here.
Yeah.
And, there's a chance she doesn't do that, and you're given near pick-em odds. I think you have to take a shot on Andrea. And last thing I'll say, too, Andrea Lee's 4-fight losing streak, it wasn't just Macy Barber and Talia Silva. Like, Miranda Maverick's a good fighter, and Viviane Araújo is very tough, powerful, and a good fighter, too. So she was actually a favorite against Viviane. It's crazy.
Yeah. Andrea Lee's the pick for sure. Moving on, we got Charles Radtke taking on Carlos Prates, sitting at minus 235. Both men 29 years of age. Charles Radtke fighting in the month of June. Watch out, because this man is coming for violence. He's highly motivated in the month of June, and he's coming in as the dog. Chuck Buffalo sitting at plus 180. You think he could pull it off here?
Chuck the F-bomb Buffalo. I think he can. I think he can, just because, we saw Prates in his debut struggle a little bit early in that fight with Trevin Giles. And I think Radtke is kind of a similar style or a similar matchup with Prates that Giles was, but he's going to do things better and he's going to have a better chin. He's younger. He's probably stronger than Trevin Giles right now. And I think that is going to play big into the first half of this fight. I think Radtke can come out there and get takedowns on Prates early. It's just going to be, how's that gas tank hold up? Because if it starts to fade, Prates is a guy that's going to rip the body. He's going to make you tired. He's got very, very good striking, and he's got very high striking IQ. Like we saw against Giles. Once Giles slowed down a little bit, he got chinned. It didn't happen that quick. Or it happened fairly quickly into that second round. But I don't know, man. I want to take a shot on plus 180 on Charlie Radtke, but I just feel like this line is going to keep growing to maybe you probably get plus 200, plus 220 before it's all said and done. We're still really, really early in the week. Prates is a known striker. He's coming off of a big knockout. Radtke just knocked out Urbina, but I think people are going to look at this matchup and think that Radtke is going to be kind of screwed against this guy who's probably a little more hyped in the striking department of Prates. So I'm going to actually pick Radtke here. I do think he has that wrestling advantage here. Strong guy, like I said. His cardio's just got to hold up. That's going to be the big thing. I don't know if I'm going to bet him yet. I think I'm going to wait to see what this line does. But for the pick, I'm going to take a shot on the dog. I think he's riding a lot of momentum right now.
If you're in the comments roasting us for the tail of the tape here, it's completely wrong. Last week we got roasted in the comments about the tail of the tape being wrong. The only thing that's accurate on the screen is their heights. Carlos Prates is 6'1". Charles Radtke is 5'9", but everything else is wrong. And I don't know who does our slides, to be honest. But, we got to get something figured out here, because these slides are either dead on or they're dead off. So we'll try to get that figured out for you. But back to the breakdown of this fight. Charles Radtke is actually 33 years old, and Carlos Prates is 30. And if we look at this fight stylistically, I think it is a tough fight for Charles Radtke, because he's a guy that wants to get inside and use his hands. I don't know that Carlos Prates is going to be able, or is going to let him inside. But if he can get inside, he can do some real good work, because that left hook we saw in his last fight, super dangerous. He throws some heavy hands. I also think he has a grappling upside here, which is probably, or at least should be, part of the game plan for Radtke, is to try to get this guy to the ground, wear him out a little bit so he's not as explosive. But on the feet, Prates is so long. He has so many weapons with his knees, his kicks, his hands, his elbows. I think it's going to be really tough for Charles Radtke to stand with him for 15 minutes unless he knocks him out with some type of punch. So I think Prates is the rightful favorite, but I'm looking at this and I think it might be a bit wide, considering Radtke does have some grappling upside. He's got knockout power, and Prates really didn't look great against Trevin Giles until he knocked him out. Yeah, he was kind of getting touched up by Giles, but Giles has that ability. He's pretty fleet of foot. He's able to get in and out, and eventually he did get caught. So for a pick, I'm going to go with Prates, because I said I think he's the rightful favorite. The line does seem a little bit wide. If Radtke does hit plus 200 or something like that, then I think the value might be on his side, because he does have the weapons to get a win here. So Prates is the pick, but seeing some value on the dog.
Yeah, I watched the Giles fight and Prates almost seemed, I don't know if maybe it's his debut jitters or what it is, but it's like he couldn't find his striking in the first round. He couldn't get it going at all. Like, even though he won by knockout, he got doubled up on the significant strikes in that fight through 1.5 rounds, or damn near less than that. So I think if Radtke comes out and just gets in his face, like, Prates doesn't strike me, at least what I've seen. He's not like the biggest counter puncher. He's not always looking to counter. He's kind of looking to walk forward and hit you with kicks and then kind of go off of that. So, if Radtke can just put him on the back foot, kind of like Giles did in that first round, I think he's going to have some success. So we'll see what happens. It's interesting. It's a fun fight.
I like it. Moving on, we got Thiago Moises coming in as a slight dog to Ludovic Klein. Thiago Moises, 29 years of age, same with Ludovic Klein. And he comes in here off a win against Mitch Ramirez, which was a leg kick TKO. Very interesting one there, and a fight that he really dominated. Taking on Ludovic Klein, who just seems to be on all the sauce nowadays, man. I don't know if he's just a bodybuilder or what, but he is 5'7". So if he's going to be fighting at 155, he's got to fill out that frame. He definitely has. He's 4-0-1 in his last 5. So he's on a nice little streak. And slight favorite here against Moises, who has a lot of experience at a very high level. Fought Makhachev, fought Benoit Saint-Denis, fought Ismagulov, Benil Dariush. Like, he's fought in the who's who. Hadn't won those fights, but he's fighting them. So interesting fight here. I mean, I got the guy's warm up behind me on the screen, so I better watch what I say. What do you got?
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. I like Moises bouncing back strong after taking an absolute beating, one of the beatings of the year against Benoit Saint-Denis, and then gets the win. But it's against Mitch Ramirez, who doesn't have the UFC experience, is not like some hot prospect or anything. It's just kind of, not the best level of competition at this point. But it's kind of the same story with Ludovic Klein. He fought AJ Cunningham in his last fight, who was not good, not UFC level either, and got the brakes beat off of him. So if Thiago can come in here and get the grappling going early, especially, try to get those muscles filled up as fast as possible on Klein and just kind of take that energy out of him, he'll have a lot of success. But Klein, as he's gotten more and more deep into his UFC career, has gotten pretty good with the wrestling, with the grappling, and he holds an 83% takedown defense. And he's fought, a lot of people in the UFC. Maybe not the most wrestlers. He's fighting a lot of kickboxing styles, Ignacio Bahamondes, Jai Herbert, AJ Cunningham even likes to stand and kind of kick and trade. So yeah, I think this fight is going to have to play out on the feet for Ludovic Klein to win. I don't think he's going to want to mess with the grappling because Moises is very good. He'll shoot takedowns, over and over until he's successful with it. We saw it against guys like Melky Costa. Comes in there, shoots, gets 4 takedowns, eventually wears him down, finds that submission. Same thing with Yagos. I mean, he took him down 3 times in that first round and was able to find the sub. But it's like when he gets caught standing after failed takedown attempts, he starts to get touched up a little bit, and especially when guys are kicking to the body, kind of like Benoit Saint-Denis. It kind of reminds me of like this is going to be Thiago Moises versus a version of Benoit Saint-Denis here, a guy who can grapple a little bit, guy who is hard to take down, and he's going to blast kicks to your body, and he's going to really piece you up if you can't start having a lot of success with that. So that's the one thing that scares me from Moises here. I do think Moises is going to be a very, very popular underdog pick this week. But everything I'm seeing, I'm just kind of leaning Ludovic Klein right now. I do think the grappling has gotten he's kind of leveled up that department, and his kickboxing is always going to be tremendous. So, and Moises is definitely there to be hit. The guy gets hit in fights. So, yeah, got to go with Klein.
I think it's kind of a tough fight for Moises, just considering Ludovic Klein seems like a pretty solid wrestler. Like 83% takedown defense, near a 50% takedown accuracy. Like, he just seems strong in those positions. And
yeah,
really any grappler that he's gone up against, he's been able to stuff the takedowns. Like Mason Jones had no success. I mean, Nate Lambert did submit him, but I think he just kind of gassed out that fight. Like, I think Ludovic Klein seems like the right side, but he just hasn't faced anybody like Thiago, I don't think, yet. Yeah. If Thiago is able to make it a grappling match, like if he can get Klein to play the grappling game, then I think Moises has all the opportunity to get a win here and maybe even a submission finish. Because I think he has that good of a BJJ if it hits the mat. But on the feet, I think Klein's just going to be a tad faster, a tad more impactful when he lands. Like, those kicks to the body are going to be huge for him. Southpaw and orthodox, it's going to be there. And then he always rips a head kick as well. And he's got really fast hands, really solid, really powerful hooks as well. So I just don't see how Thiago can make him respect his work on the feet. I think he's got to get it to the mat. And at that point, like, I think Ludovic Klein's probably the rightful favorite. Like, he can piece him up on the feet, and then we don't really know how the grappling is going to go yet, but based on paper, I could say Ludovic Klein should be able to stuff some takedowns and maybe even get some of his own. So it's one of those fights where after about 2.5 minutes in, you're kind of feel out how this fight's going to go. Like if Moises has success off the rip, then he'll probably have success the entire fight. But if he doesn't, then it might be a slow death for Thiago. So I'll take Ludovic Klein for the pick, but I'm not super confident in either side, to be honest. It's one of those that I think is probably priced pretty fairly.
Yeah.
And, we'll see.
I keep coming back to that Joel Alvarez knockout, too, in the first round against Thiago Moises. He's there to be hit. It's a scary game against a guy that kicks and strikes like Ludovic Klein. But it's actually a good matchup, though. It's going to be a good fight to have on a fight night card.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it. Moving on, we got Punahele Soriano moving down to the welterweight division. And he's still coming in as an underdog. Miguel Baeza sitting at -156. I believe that is continuing to grow as well. He's up towards -190, maybe even -200 at this point. But Baeza's been off for a while. Last fight was Andre Fialho, where he got knocked out. He's on a 3-fight skid. And Punahele Soriano was 1-4 in his last 5. So this one ain't really between two world beaters. And probably winner maybe stays, loser probably walks. So maybe even both of them get cut at this point. I'm trying to make room on the roster. But Punahele going down to 170. I don't know if that's a good move or not. I mean, he is usually undersized at 185, but the guy just has no cardio after one round. So maybe cutting the weight, getting that extra, training in and getting his cardio right, maybe that helps him, but it's also the weight cut could be a deficit to his cardio. So that's kind of something to look out for. See how he looks at weigh-ins. But interesting fight here. What do you got?
Yeah, both guys are going to be extremely hard to trust in this spot because they're both dangerous. So you look at a guy like Miguel Baeza, who's been knocked out in his last 2 fights, one being to Chaos Williams, which you can live with because Chaos is kind of a wild striker and he's got a ton of power and he can catch basically anybody, as we saw in his last fight a few weeks ago. But then you got him losing by knockout to Andre Fialho. Okay, Andre Fialho left the UFC on it was either 3 or 4 fight knockout loss streak. 4.
Yeah, it'd be 4.
Okay, Andre Fialho 2 or 3 weeks ago just fought in a regional scene promotion in Europe and got knocked out again outside the UFC. Like this dude, if you can't knock out Andre Fialho, like there's something wrong. And Baeza got beaten up by him and put out in that first round. So that's a big red flag to me against a guy like Punahele Soriano who has power. I just kind of look at Puna at this point, and after seeing him fighting like the higher level competition, not the Jamie Pickett's and Dusko Todorovich's, but the Roman Kopolovs and the Nick Maximov, Brendan Allen, like he really got exposed for kind of just being a wild
Nick Maximov.
No, okay, Nick Maximov is higher level than Jamie Pickett and Dusko Todorovic.
I don't know.
He's that next tier at least. but that's kind of like what I'm saying though is he gets that next tier and the wild big power shots on the feet don't really cut it anymore. I think he kind of got exposed for not really having a well-rounded game and a game that translates to UFC level. Like if you can't go out there and gas out in the first round against Dustin Stoltzfus and he submits you in round 2, not a good look. Like Roman Kopylov, I can live with that knockout loss. Roman Kopylov is a savage if you let him get some shots off. But I mean, losing by split decision to Nick Maximov, getting taken down 11 times in that fight, gassing out, it's just not a good look at all. Baeza is very dangerous early in fights. He's knocked out guys like Matt Brown before, submits Takashi Sato. He's a fairly well-rounded fighter. I just can't trust either guy. I think Puna is going to be live for a knockout in the first round. If he doesn't get it, he's going to gas because I think Baeza is a guy that could at least, make him work a little bit. He's going to throw a little bit of volume out to him, going to rip some kicks. So, yeah, I'm going to take Baeza for the pick. But, if he loses, I think he does get put out early in this fight. This is a greasy fight, man. This is a one between two guys you just don't want to trust ever with your money.
Yeah, I mean, unless Puna has fixed his cardio issues, the only way he wins is first round knockout because he's already pretty wild when he throws, like just looping punches, and he just really tries to wing that overhand left and land it.
He strikes like a wrestler.
Yeah, and then once he gets tired, it's like it's not there anymore. So if Baeza can stay safe in round 1 and Puna starts to fade, then he should be able to get a win and probably get a finish. And Baeza could also knock him out in the first round. It really just comes down to if Baeza, like, what has he been doing with his time off? Like, he's been off for almost 2 years, or it might have been 2 years. So is he training? Is he working on stuff? Or has he just been taking time off recovering or what? But I would assume he's training. I would assume he's been in the gym, getting better, and maybe we see a different version of him here. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, so he kind of needs a win. Puna needs a win too, but it really hasn't been much time since his last fight, so I can't really expect to see big improvements in his skills. And I don't really think his skills are really that great. And then you pair that with the cardio issues, it's not a good look. So Baez is the pick for me. And if Soriano can look like a different beast here at 170, I'll eat it. But Baez is the side for me. Moving on, we got Julian Marquez coming in at -118, a very slight favorite over Zach Reese. Zach Reese, we know this man to be the guy that Cody Brundage bounced his head off the canvas, and he went out to sleep in his UFC debut as a very big favorite. Now he is coming in as a slight dog against Julian Marquez, Cuban Missile Crisis, who hasn't looked great as of late either. Back-to-back knockout losses. One of them coming to Marc-Andre Barrios and the other coming to Gregory Rodriguez. 2 decent fighters. 2 very solid fighters. Here he is. Can Julian Marquez get back on track? Or does Zach Reese right his wrongs from his UFC debut? What do you think?
Yeah, Zach Reese is hard to kind of get a read on, because his Contender Series fight, he pulls off the armbar, in the first round pretty early, and then comes out there and has another one, another submission basically locked in, and Cody Brundage slams him for the knockout. So, it tells me Zach Reese is obviously dangerous with the submissions. If you look at his pro record, he's got most of his wins by knockout or TKO. Like, he's got some pop in his hands too. And the attributes, like, he's a very physically imposing guy, standing at 6'4", 77-inch reach for 185 pounds. Like, he's one of the bigger dudes you're going to find in the division. He's tall, he's long, and has some at least finishing abilities, as we've seen in his past fights and even almost in the UFC. So, but Julian Marquez is a guy who's been in there with good competition. He's got a ton more UFC experience. His last fight against Marc-Andre Barrios was kind of a back and forth war with a ton of volume on both sides. The fight ended in the second round towards the end with him losing by TKO, but Marc-Andre landed 109 significant strikes, while Julian Marquez landed 82 of himself. Like, those times in that fight where Julian Marquez looked like he was going to, take over and start really doing some damage and wrapping it up. Like, he looked pretty good, just kind of ran out of gas. Against RoboCop, he gets knocked out in the first round. RoboCop's done that to his fair share of opponents. Beat Sam Alvey. He's fought in some other guys that are kind of lower level in the UFC. The one loss on his record that does concern me is the split decision to Alessio De Chirico, who's he was not the best fighter in the UFC. It was a little bit older. But, outside of that, I think the experience holds a lot of value here because he's fought in a lot of different types of fighters. He's fought in the, Gregory Rodriguez, who's very dangerous with the submissions and has heavy hands. He's fought in the volume guys like Marc-Andre Barrios. I think he's going to come in here against Zach Reese and maybe learn from his loss against Marc-Andre and stay a little more composed and let Zach Reese make the rookie mistakes here. And if Julian Marquez just slows down his game a little bit, I think he's got decent skills, and I think he has the ability to beat guys like Zach Reese, who are inexperienced, who we've seen knocked out in his last fight. And, I think he'll know not to really chase him down to the ground and don't let himself get armbarred. And if he doesn't, I think he has a good chance to kind of make this a dogfight and take one off of Zach Reese here. So I'm going with Julian Marquez. The line, it's not a bad spot. If you're confident in him, -118 on a UFC card is a pretty good bet. So,
yeah, I think Zach Reese kind of a can crusher before he got in the UFC. Like, he really wasn't beating anybody worth a shit, like 1-0, 0-1, 0-0. 6-3, 5-10. Like he was crushing cans. Round one finishes. He's always had his way, and then finally gets a loss where he gets knocked out. Then he comes in here against Julian Marquez, and Marquez has seen some pretty good opponents. And I just, based on the few moments that we saw in Reese versus Brundage, like I didn't think Reese's stand-up looked very good either. So I think Marquez could probably put it on him on the feet. And then if he takes him down, I mean, the blueprint's out. Like, watch out for the armbar from Zach Reese.
Yeah.
And maybe he picks him up and slams him on his head again and does the same shit. So I'll take Julian Marquez. I'll take the experience. And honestly, I think he's looked pretty good. Or he looked pretty good on the feet against Marc-Andre Barriault until he started to slow down. And in this fight, if it makes it to a round two, like Zach Reese has never been to a round two. So we don't know how his cardio is. And at that point, I'm going to side with the experience. So all signs point to Marquez to me. I'll take it for the pick.
I think Marquez is tougher in his last two knockout losses too. I think Marc-Andre, I mean, you throw with that much volume at this weight class in the matter of 7.5 minutes, like someone's going to fall or crumble. And, RoboCop's just a savage with the power. So
moving on, Bruno Ferreira coming in at minus 280 against Dustin Stoltzfus. Stoltzfus sitting at plus 210. Stoltzfus coming off the win over Punahele, who we talked about earlier, and Bruno Ferreira coming in off the win over Phil Haas, where Phil Haas, that was the last straw for that man in the UFC. And here we are, Bruno Ferreira, round one finisher, knockout puncher, the guy that did knock out RoboCop, and also got knocked out by Nursultan Ruziboyev. So you got to take that into account. But Stoltzfus, big dog here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think Dustin Stoltzfus has a chance to make a little resurgence here, get a couple wins in a row, because Bruno is going to be dangerous in the first round. We see it in every one of his fights. He knocked out Phil Haas, who doesn't have a chin left, like that thing's been gone and packed up and moved away a while ago. Loses to Nursultan, which was a nasty shot. Nursultan just fought Joaquin Buckley. Like the guy's not a bad fighter, even in regards of taking that loss. So, but when you knock out RoboCop and early in the fight in a bad way, like it just shows the level of power that you have in your hands. But those guys are really willing to engage with Bruno Ferreira. And I don't think Dustin Stoltzfus exactly is going to be. I think Dustin's a guy who's going to want to try to slow this fight down. He's not going to stand in there and get in the pocket and start trading bombs with Bruno here by any means. And for Dustin, like if he can grab onto Bruno and just, put as much time in this fight, in a kind of like a stall or a standstill or up against the cage in the first round, it's going to benefit him going in deeper to this fight, because Bruno carrying all that muscle and strength and stuff, I just don't know if he has the build or the stamina to really go all 3 rounds. I think Dustin does, and I think Dustin eventually, once Bruno gets tired, can start finding these takedowns. And once he does, I think Bruno's kind of be stuck on his back with Dustin even looking for submissions, landing a little bit of ground and pound, and just overall being the fresher fighter in that second and third round. I'm going to take a shot on the dog here in Dustin Stoltzfus. And if you're betting this and you're betting on Bruno, I think you have to take him to win by knockout in the first or second, because if he doesn't, I do think he's going to gas, and I do think Dustin could even find that kind of same submission scenario that he did against Punahele Soriano. So yeah. I don't think Dustin is necessarily a better fighter than Bruno. I just think he's got a little more composure, and he's going to know how to kind of slow this thing down and give himself the best shot to win. So give me Dustin.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting matchup because Stoltzfus just fought another southpaw who loves to wing an overhand left. And he had a good game plan going into that one. I mean, he stayed tight up top, didn't really let anything go through. And then he used a lot of his teep kicks up the middle to keep him at range. And it was just really frustrating for Soriano to try to get into boxing range and land the hand. So going into this one, I think he can implement somewhat of a similar game plan against Ferreira, but I think it's just going to be a lot tougher. I think Ferreira's movement around is a lot better than Soriano's, and I think he hits harder. He's just a little bit more explosive, a little bit more compact. And then it just comes down to the cardio. Like, we don't know what Bruno really looks like after round one, because he's so dangerous in round one that he can get a finish there. So Yeah, like you said, I think Bruno round 1 KO, or you look at Stoltzfus later. Maybe just take him live after round 1. Maybe you get a good number. But I think Stoltzfus is a little bit underrated in this spot just based on the fact that I think his chin is actually pretty decent. Uh, other than getting front kick to the face from Magomedov, which didn't even put him out initially. He had to get some follow-up shots to get out of there. I think his stand-up is okay. And then the grappling game, it should be a good avenue for him to use in this fight. Like he can pick a single leg, get him to the ground, and I think he's a pretty strong grappler. So there's upside there, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with Fajeda for a pick, but I'm not playing minus 280. Like there's just it's round 1 or bust to me, and I don't know that he can get it done in round 1. But I still think he's probably the better fighter. So I'm going to take him for the pick, but I don't know that it's really the right side to be betting on.
Yeah, I really liked for me, picking Dustin. A lot of it comes down to, his game plan against Puna. Like you said, the kicks to the body really played a big factor as that thing went, towards the second round. And I think that's exactly a similar scenario that could happen with Bruno. You eat the body shots early, you're expending a lot of energy throwing these big bombs. If you can't get him out of there, I think he's going to be very tired come round 2.
Agree. Moving on, we got Raul Rosas Jr., the rebooking here against Ricky Turcios. Turcios coming in as the dog. Jr. sitting at minus 265. He is still 19 years of age. Ricky Turcios, 30 years of age. We've broke down this fight before. It got canceled. We thought it was going to happen the week after, and here we are, like a month or two after that, and they're fighting in Louisville. They're supposed to fight in Mexico, and now they're fighting in Louisville. So interesting there, but I think we were both on Rosas originally, and have you changed your mind?
No, I'm still on Rosas here for a couple of reasons. Like, first, I think Ricky is a very awkward fighter who throws a lot of volume, a kind of meaningless volume. Like the guy doesn't really throw anything to end the fight. I don't think he's going to go out there and clip Rosas Jr. or knock him out or anything. And his volume isn't something I think that just sways the judges either. Like he literally does not land with much impact at all. If you look at his UFC record, I mean, he lost in the Contender Series to Boston Salmon, wins against Brady Heastam by split decision, and then loses to Ayman Sahabi, and then wins against split decision to Kevin Natividad. Like he's in a position to lose every single fight that he's had under the UFC banner since the Contender Series fight. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't like seeing that up against the guy and Rosas Jr., who can probably win 2 rounds here comfortably. If he's not getting knocked out, I think Rosas is going to be able to come across the cage, pick him up, put him on his back. Ricky's not the strongest physically imposing guy in the world. And, Rosas really only has that one blemish on his record to Christian Rodriguez, where he landed 2 significant strikes and gassed out, but he didn't get finished. He hung tough. And, he did have a very good first round in that fight, regardless of what it shows on the stat sheet. So, and Christian Rodriguez has gone on to spoil a bunch of parties for UFC debuters and sophomore outings for guys that the UFC think are going to have a lot of hype behind them. So I think Ricky too, like I forget what fight it is. He looked like an absolute lunatic in where he's clapping his hands, and might have been the Zahabi fight.
It's awful, man.
Ricky's
just a weird dude.
Yeah. I just don't skill for skill. I think Rosas is getting better. I think Ricky could be getting better, but not at a pace this young kid who's hungry, who wants to be a winner, who has shown that he's got pop in his hands. He's very good at wrestling. He might not be the most technical striker, but I think it's something that we're going to see improve little by little each time he comes out. And he's not really going to be in much danger of getting knocked out against Ricky. So maybe he can showcase that a little bit and use some of those strikes to set up his takedowns and work from there. So yeah, I'm going with Rosas here.
Yeah. I'm not a big Ricky guy, never have been. I think he just throws shit out there just to throw it. And I don't think he has really any intention. And then he's tough to deal with in some scrambles just because he's so wiry and he's always moving. But I think Rosas could probably get a first round sub here. If you look at one thing we did get to see, now that this fight got canceled, we look at what Rosas did to Christian Rodriguez in the first round of that fight, nearly had him out with a submission. And then we saw Christian Rodriguez fight Isaac Dulgarian. And Dulgarian is a 145er. And Dulgarian was ragged on Christian Rodriguez, but he couldn't get him out of there. So we saw that after this fight got canceled, and that just kind of gives me a little bit more confidence here taking Rosas, who we know is always going to be getting better since he's so young. And I think he's a really strong grappler. I think he should be able to get a round one finish here. So I'm going to take him and for the pick. And Freaky Turcios has any way to win this fight. It's probably just by sloppy decision. And, plus 200 just doesn't do it for me. So I'll take Rosas. We move on to the co-main event. Dominic Reyes coming in as the dog, as he probably should. A 4-fight losing streak. He was once 12-0. Once nearly beat John Jones. And here we are. 3 fights later. 3 straight knockout losses. A long layoff since he got knocked out by Ryan Spann. And he's coming back to take on Dustin Jacoby, who sits at minus 230. He is the older fighter, but he might be more durable at this point than Dominic Reyes. Almost anybody might be more durable than Dominic Reyes. Who do you got?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think Dominic Reyes, skill for skill, had the chance, and obviously showed it against John Jones, but he had the chance to be a top 5 guy and one of the best in the world. And I thought he was going to be up there for a long time because, he wasn't the oldest guy in the world, around that time frame. He beat Chris Weidman in 2019, Volkan Oezdemir, Oven St. Preux, Jared Cannonier. Like, this guy that wasn't really going in there against easy opponents, and he was winning every time. I mean, knocked out Chris Weidman, knocked out Jared Cannonier. Those are impressive wins, and it ultimately led to a meeting with John Jones in a fight a lot of people this day think that he won. Like, it was very, very close. John talks about, almost even just giving up in that fight and just thinking, hey, my time has passed. I'm passing the torch to Dom Reyes. And then something clicked and he tried to turn it on and he ended up getting a very close decision win. So even though it was unanimous, which was crazy on the scorecards. After that, though, like, you could see that loss to John Jones baked into the lines. He was a minus 245 favorite over Jan Blachowicz, which is crazy. And he loses that fight. He's minus 195 against Ryan Spann and he gets knocked out. Now he's plus 200 against Dustin Jacoby. The problem with Dominic Reyes in this matchup is, he's going to get hit at some point because Jacoby is a striker first. He's a kickboxer. He's very accurate. He's very technical. And at some point, he's going to land. Jacoby hasn't come out here and knocked out every one of his opponents by any means. I mean, he knocked out Kennedy and Nzechukwu and then Daeun Jung in his last 2 wins. But before that, it's, it's decision, TKO decision. He doesn't have the biggest power shots in the world. He also doesn't really, sit down and throw 100% power in all of his shots. But he is accurate, and that's what scares me. For Dom Reyes, I think he's just got to come in and make this a dirty fight, because if he can, Jacoby likes that, real flowy type striking. He doesn't really like to be in these brawls, and we see that against Alonzo Minifield. He was able to hurt Jacoby with some big shots. Azamat Murzakanov, kind of the same thing. When the fights got in close, Azamat was landing some big shots, knocked him down once, and was ultimately able to get the decision win there too. I like Dustin here based off the fact Reyes' chin might be completely gone. Like, he's taken 3 bad knockout losses. The Yuri Prohaska one out cold. Ryan Spann, that shot didn't even look like Ryan wound up and put everything into it. He was out cold. Jan Blachowicz put him out. Dustin, I just think he can kind of do the same here because he's very methodical with his striking. Defensively, if he gets in a brawl, he can get clipped. But if you can't really get into that range, Dustin's going to throw those front kicks. He's going to pick you apart, and sooner or later, he's going to land some pretty good shots. So, I'm going with Jacoby to win the fight. Not betting it at minus 230, especially after the greasy decisions he's been in the last few years. But I am going to take him to win.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way I can believe in a chin for like Dominic Reyes. Like, how can I have confidence in a chin to come back, just magically come back? There's no way. I mean, the beating he took from Prohaska was insane. And then for him to get finished with that spinning back elbow was just disgusting. And then he gets knocked out by a jab against Ryan Spann. if you get knocked out by a jab, I don't know that you're going to be able to take too many shots or too many jabs from Dustin Jacoby. Like, I know Spann's got a pretty powerful jab, but Jacoby's going to put 20, 30, 40, 50 jabs on you in a single fight. I think eventually Dominic Reyes is just going to, it's just going to be too much. Like, I don't think his brain can handle it at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. I want to take Dustin Jacoby for the pick. I think this is a kickboxing battle. I don't really see Reyes mixing in takedowns. So I'll take Dustin Jacoby, whose chin isn't really that great, but at this point, like, he's been knocked down, but he's been able to survive. And if he can get knocked down and survive, then I think he's got a chance to knock out Dominic Reyes. And he is very dangerous in that first round. Like, he's got first round knockout over Nzechukwu, who's a big dude, southpaw, and then first round knockout against Dawoon Jung, who I don't think had been knocked out before that fight. So yeah, I think it's a valid spot for Dustin Jacoby. I think it's a warranted minus 230 price tag. It's just, do you want to pay it or not? Because if it does go to the scorecards and Dominic Reyes doesn't get knocked out, maybe he does some good work, but I think Dustin Jacoby could probably get him out of there. So I'll take that side.
You want a crazy stat for Dominic Reyes is this is the biggest underdog he's been since fighting John Jones. Actually, in his career, besides John Jones, he was plus 375 against Jones, and then plus 176 is the next best price you could have ever got on him in his career. So interesting.
That is crazy because I remember Spann was a pretty big dog there.
Yeah, he's almost plus 200.
Yeah, and made quick work of him. So we move on. Main event time. Jared Cannonier coming in as a slight dog against Nasruddin Imavov, sitting at minus 138. Imavov, 12 years younger than the 40-year-old Jared Cannonier. But Jared Cannonier does not look like your average 40-year-old. I'll tell you that. Look on the screen. The man is yoked up. The man's always in great shape. We know him because he was an ex-heavyweight, moved all the way down to middleweight, and he is the killer gorilla, man. He is juiced up to the gills. And at 40 years of age, doesn't look like he's slowing down because he had probably the best performance of his career against Marvin Vettori. Just beat the brakes off of him. Couldn't get him out of there because Marvin Vettori's too damn tough, but that fight could have easily been stopped multiple times. Imavov coming off the win against Roman Dolidze, where it was a pretty clear win for him. It was a majority decision, which is crazy, but he should have won that one unanimously. Outstruck him 112-34. Landed a knockdown, had a sub attempt, completely dismantled him, man. Just showed the levels there in that fight. So he's a slight favorite here against Cannonier. What do you think?
Yeah, Imavov's hard to get a read on because there's times he looks very, very good against Dolidze, even against Chris Curtis until the headbutt. Like, he looked way faster than Chris, doubled him up on the shots. Didn't look terrible against Strickland until the later rounds where he really started to slow down. But he's beaten Buckley, Edmund Shabazian. The one loss that just blows your mind is Phil Hawes. Like, that's crazy. He's a good fighter and he's fast on the feet. He can mix in a little bit of wrestling. We've seen doesn't really like to go for it, and he's dangerous with the submissions. But on the Jared Cannonier side, people have been talking about this online, and I think there might be some truth to it now that we've seen it all year. These older fighters are starting to look a lot better than they did in the USADA era. And Jared Cannonier kind of fits the bill. I mean, Jared's 40 years old, looks like he's 30 years old, and then he goes in there against Marvin Vettori and puts up 241 significant strikes over the course of 5 rounds. If he puts up 241 against Imavov, he's going to win. If he doesn't get knocked out or submitted, Jared Cannonier will win because Imavov is a guy who will slow down. He burns pretty hot and he's very jittery, and he moves very fast and in and out of the pocket, and he's got a lot of energy early. But against Sean Strickland, he slowed down tremendously. We've seen him kind of slow down towards the end of fights in other cases too. And Cannonier, for being 40, I've just been shocked with the cardio as of late. Like, it hasn't always been good. Jared Cannonier is a guy who used to fight at heavyweight, has slowly made his way down, and kind of in that process where he was kind of newer to 185. There was some times where I kind of questioned his gas tank, but going against Marvin Vettori, who's kind of a workhorse too, and being able to take him down 4 times and land almost 250 significant strikes after kind of emptying the tank in round 2, trying to finish him, was super impressive to me. So it just depends. Like everybody knows that Jared Cannonier's coming off of an MCL knee injury, which is kind of significant at 40 years old. So maybe it plays a factor, maybe it doesn't. But if Jared Cannonier's on the good stuff post USADA and is juiced to the gills like he looks, he's got a good chance to win this fight, in my opinion. And right now, he's the underdog. I think Imavov, though, just now entering his prime, is still getting better and better. That's kind of where you got to look out for. Like, is Jared ready to take that step back finally? And is Imavov still improving? And if those two things meet in the middle, I think Imavov could definitely get him. But if Jared's still kind of trending to being a very good fighter and not really losing any speed or endurance, I think he's going to make it a tough fight for Imavov.
Yeah, this one's really tough for me because I can make arguments for both sides. Like, Cannonier looked great against Vettori, but Vittori's just such a stationary target.
Yeah.
And kind of the same way with Strickland. Like, he landed a bunch against Strickland, but he's not easy to hit, especially to the head, but you can still pick up your numbers. Like, even Paulo Costa landed 150 against him, and Cannonier landed 141. I just don't know that Imavov's going to be as stationary and as easy to hit because look at his losses, Cannonier's losses. It's Izzy, who's a guy that likes to stay to the outside, pick his shots. It's Whitaker, same type of fighting style there. Maybe a little bit more aggressive on the Whitaker side. But he's kind of beating guys that are there to be hit, like Brunson, Kelvin Gastelum. And I don't know. Like, I kind of want to lean the Imavov side just because I think he's super great from the outside. He explodes in with big shots. And then I also just see that the cardio fail him in a bunch of fights. Like the Buckley fight, he was up 2-0. Buckley starts to come on in the third. The Strickland fight just completely starts to go downhill once it hits the round 2 into round 3. Strickland takes over. And then the Dolidze fight, like he nearly finishes him in the first. And then after that, like he's just not really doing much. He's just kind of sitting there bouncing around the outside. I think he was just super gassed at that point. So I don't know. Maybe Imavov could finish him early and we don't even need to see that from him because Cannonier is 40. At the end of the day, he's 40. So he's been around for a while. Maybe he could get finished in that first round or even the second round, but I would say he doesn't, and we probably see a fight that goes later. And at that point, I think I'm probably going to favor Cannonier with the experience because at the end of the day, I mean, Imavov's best win is Dolidze, who was 35 or 36 and just really not that good unless you go to the ground with him and give him a chance to submit you. So I would side with Cannonier ever so slightly. I mean, he's a slight dog. I think he should maybe be a slight favorite just based on that experience, that high-level experience. He's fought for a title before, and I think his skills are super, super good. And even at 40, I think he's still solid enough, to take on a guy like Imavov. So I'll take Cannonier for the pick. And those are the picks for UFC 3, or not 302, UFC Louisville. Once again, if you want all the bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks Premium Discord. Link is down in the description. And stay tuned to my YouTube channel at HI Picks. I'll drop my official picks and then my best bets video later in the week. And stay up to date with everything at Home of Picks on IG, at HI Picks on the medias. For me, where can I find you?
All social media is at the Parlay MMA.
Appreciate y'all. Till next week, we'll be breaking down an Apex card. But good luck to your bets. Good luck to your picks. We'll see you next week.